During the 18th dynasty, Pharaoh in Egypt was around 1567 before AD until 1339 before AD. On the west coast of Sumatra there is a crowded port with the name Baris. This port is well developed because there is a nation that regulates, as well as guarding it from pirate attacks or other countries. The ruler of the port of Baris is known as the Malay nation, which in Sanskrit or Tamil language means hill. As the name suggests, the Malay people settled in the hills. It is estimated that the Malay nation starts from 4 nations, namely Arabic, European China and Indies. The first nation came was the Malay Indian nation or the Himalayan.
The Himalayas are an interaction between the Indians, special descendants of the Ham of the Prophet Noah, and the ancient Malays or Atlantic Sundowans who survived the flood disaster of the Prophet Noah. At first they lived at the foot of the Himalayas around 6000 BC. They came to the island of Sumatra following their Polynesian relatives, descendants of Heth from Ham of the Prophet Noah who first came and resided in the eastern part of the archipelago. In the year 4500 BC came the Chinese nation or the Formosan people of Shinni descent from Yaphits from the Prophet Noah. This nation brings an agrarian culture from its place of origin. They brought the Harappa civilization, which is known to be very advanced. And finally around 2200 BC, the ancient Arabs or the Kaburu descendants of the sons of the Prophet Noah came. The Kaburu are loyal followers of the Prophet Hud. They came with the belief of monotheism in the people of the island of Sumatra. The unification of these 4 nations is known as the Malay nation with the main livelihood as fishermen and farmers. The Malays, like the first ancestors of the Himalayas, inhabit the highlands, namely along the Bukit Barisan. Starting from this Bukit Barisan, the Malays spread to remote parts of the archipelago such as Sumatra, Kalimantan, Sulawesi, the Malay Peninsula, Siam, Kambuja, Sunda, Java, Bali, Nusa Tenggara, Maluku and Papua. According to historians, the Mongoloid nation so dominates the area in the north of the archipelago. The question arises why the Mongoloids did not expand their power to the south. Wasn't the archipelago a very worthy area to be controlled? The area was fertile and stored various mining materials such as gold, tin and so on. The answer is because the archipelago at that time was protected by the Malays. The Malays were known to have a strong maritime power. The army has good martial arts. In around 2025 BC, it was reported that Prophet Ibrahim, a descendant of Shalk from Sam of the Prophet Noah, had arrived to preach in the land of the Malay nation. He is told to marry the daughter of the Malay nation named Siti Kantura. From this Kantura child the Madian, Chaldean and Dutro Malays will emerge. Dutro Malays or young Malays who currently inhabit the archipelago are also known as Bani Jawi. Bani, which comes from the word Bani, which means people, Jawi from the word Ji, which means one, and We, which means God. So the meaning of Bani Jawi is a people who believe in one God. The Javanese are the largest tribe of Bani Jawi who adhere to monotheism. And this nation is also the holder of the secret of the end of time, which previously built various civilizations, ancient cities, and was involved in major wars with other nations that have become extinct. Like the Sumerians and Akkadians since the flood in the days of the Prophet Noah. This nation's adventure is a very long epic. To be able to know and learn about the characters of this mysterious nation, you can explore the long history of their journey and various relics along their journey through history, which is the source of the secret altar of this mysterious nation. What does altar mean? Altar in simple language is an additional personality that will usually appear under certain conditions. The term altar actually comes from certain mind control terms such as trauma-based technique. The easiest example is when someone is being chased by a fierce dog. Suddenly that person will run fast, and if there is a high wall in the way, he will definitely jump over the wall to save himself. So he himself is surprised by his extraordinary ability. The altar always hides behind the main personality that overshadows the altar. But when the subject is in a certain condition where the main personality is unable to handle it, this altar will suddenly appear and act. Then the subject will change to another altar that is different from the main altar. It is not impossible that this altar will replace the previous altar as the main personality of the subject. This altar is hiding within the mysterious nation. The Bani Jawi are the mystery people in question who have changed a lot from their original character when they were in the Canaanite and Sumerian regions of Mesopotamia due to the long journey of time over the previous thousands of years, as well as changes due to weather and adventures that crossed hundreds of years ago. Kilometers heading east to the Promised Land as revealed by God to Prophet Ibrahim. According to genealogical research so far, Abraham had 3 wives, namely Sarah, Hagar and Keturah. Sarah gave birth to Isaac, while Hagar gave birth to Ishmael, and Keturah gave birth to 6 children, namely Zimran, Joksan, Medan, Midian, Ishbak, and Shua. Prophet Isaac sent down the Jews while the Ishmaelites brought down the Arabs. Keturah is defined as an unknown nationality. The question is, who is this person? Where did she come from? It was destined from the belly of this Keturah that great conquering nations such as Chaldea, Media and Persian were born, who inherited the Sumerians, Akkadians, Assyrians, Babylonians and others from the Bani Jawi. Noah's great-grandson of Jarai descended from Heth, from Canaan, from Ham, from Noah. Where in the ancient Jewish text says that someday there will be conquering nations who become enemies of the Jews from their brothers, descendants of Keturah. For thousands of years the Jews were enslaved and fought by a vicious and cruel nation who was so brave that they could be imagined in their saga as giants, pagans and barbarians. If we look at the story of Moses, who wants his people to enter Palestine, where the Jews insist they don't want to because there are fierce people in Palestine, need to be remembered due to trauma with a painful history of their nation being bullied by their siblings, many of whom from their stepmother's side. The Jewish rabbis have distinguished the status of the wives of Prophet Ibrahim's wives, where only Sarah is referred to as a wife while Hagar and Keturah are concubines, even though the Prophet Ibrahim never discriminated against all his wives. Need to be reminded that at the time of the Prophet Ibrahim there was no nation called Jews. And indeed Abraham was not a Jew. Prophet Ibrahim came from an ancient people who were contemporary with the extinct Hittites and the mystery nation in Egypt, who may have passed on the secrets of the pyramids and advanced technology of that era to the Copts, who became the government after that, including Ramses II and the time of Moses. The Jews are descended from the Jarai descendants of the prophet Ishak, where his son Prophet Yaakov has been called Israel, which means he likes to walk at night. From this prophet Yaakov descended his children, including Levi, Yusuf, Benjamin and Yahudzah. From here we detect Kadov that display Jewish characters such as Levi and Yahudzah. Benjamin is also Yusuf's favorite brother, who met again after a long separation when the prophet Yusuf occupied a high position in the government of the king of Egypt. At that time the Egyptians were still a lower-class nation in the government of other ancient nations, until they became stronger and succeeded in establishing their own government, as in the era of Prophet Solomon and Prophet David. At that time their 6 brothers had built a very powerful power. At that time they had advanced little by little faster than the Jews, created various sciences and technologies, built cities with high and thick walls, built a systematic modern organization and arranged a strong army, and advanced warfare techniques. Keep in mind that currently the world in other parts of the world, such as mainland China and the small continent of India, is still backward and less populated. Sometimes people from the West have wandered to India and China to capture the natives who inhabit the forest to be slaves or manual labor to build walls and cities. At the same time, the Jews were still colonized by the nations that ruled them. Back to the mystery woman named Keturah earlier, the sources of ancient Jewish sources are also still vague in discussing their origins. But if you look at the life of the prophet Ibrahim as a patriarch, it is possible for him to only marry with respectable tribes. Keturah means frankincense or perfume, which is often used in ritual ceremonies. From here we can trace the Bani Jawi as a spiritual nation. But some sources say the possibility of Keturah comes from the great king Sargon, who ruled Acadia. Actually, the Great Pyramid was not built during the reign of Pharaoh Khufu or Chops, but was built centuries before. Egyptian pharaohs just fixed it. The nation that built the pyramid has mastered the science of very advanced architects. This can be seen from the shape of the building. And in determining the location of the pyramids, they looked at the distances of the stars in the sky and the coordination of the constellations. This proves that they are experts in astronomy, seeing the position of the 3 pyramids following the coordinate points of the constellations. The Great Pyramid of Giza, which coincides with the constellation of Orion in the sky and points directly towards the Qibla. This is the greatest mystery in the history of humanity. Just to add to our insight from the birth of the Prophet Isa according to the Ad calendar, namely 1 AD. How human life in the time of the Prophet Isa lived. How is human progress after 2,000 years after the birth of Prophet Isa, as a comparison of how long the Prophet Adam as the first human until the flood of the Prophet Noah? Let's say about 2,000 years. This is a very minimal estimate because when humans first came down to earth until the flood event of the time of the Prophet Noah could take thousands of years. It is very logical if human progress reached the greatest and advanced level. So if we think like this, we will not be surprised by stories like Atlantis and Lemuria, as well as the story of Rama, who has an airplane-like UFO. War also involves nuclear effects such as those found in Mohenjo-daro and Harappa. Maybe you find it funny with the scenario shown here. But all of that is supported by many facts such as mystery paintings on the walls of the Temple of the Pharaohs that tell ancient myths about the production of electrical energy by painting underground cables and filaments. And the most shocking is the discovery of a nuclear plant more than 2 million years old in Africa. That's a little discussion about the secrets of the Bani Jawi of the archipelago.